From Yakuza to cartel warlords, these real gangs ruled with terror. The truth is darker than any movie you've seen. The Yakuza are not just one gang. They are a collection of syndicates spread across Japan and far beyond. At their peak, they were estimated to have more than 80,000 members. That's more than some armies. What makes them especially terrifying isn't just their numbers or the scale of their operations, but the way they blend centuries-old rituals with cold, calculated control over black markets, illegal gambling protection rackets, and yes, even certain political and corporate ties. One of the most recognizable things about the Yakuza is their ink. Not just any tattoos, full-body artwork, sometimes done the old way with wooden sticks and needles and painful, secretive sessions. These tattoos aren't for show. They mark loyalty, rank, and history. If a member betrays the code, they don't just get kicked out. In many cases, they're expected to cut off a piece of their own finger. That's not urban legend. That's their version of accountability. They've been known to run entire districts where local shops pay them for protection, and entire nightlife scenes operate under their watch. Want to open a club in a certain area of Tokyo or Osaka? You go through them. Don't, and things get messy, fast. What's eerie is how they often mix with the legitimate world. Some of them wear tailored suits, attend public ceremonies, and move through high-end offices. In the 1980s and 90s, their influence reached deep into Japan's financial system. Think of it as The Godfather, but with katana blades, silence, and contracts, inked in both words and fear. And yet they have rules. No random attacks, no harming civilians without a reason. It's a twisted code of ethics, one that's been slowly unraveling in recent years. Authorities have cracked down hard, passing laws that make it nearly impossible for them to even rent an apartment or open a bank account. Some syndicates have splintered, and infighting has increased. But don't let that fool you. They haven't disappeared. They've just changed masks. Today, the Yakuza are more discreet, working behind screens and in the shadows of legitimate companies. They still control parts of the underworld, and in times of crisis like natural disasters, they've even shown up offering supplies faster than the government. Creepy? Definitely. Strategic? Absolutely. Their story isn't one of simple violence. It's about structure, silence, and a chilling ability to adapt. Beneath the suits of ink and the silence beats the heart of one of the most enduring criminal organizations on Earth. They're known for faces covered in ink, stares that feel colder than steel, and a level of violence that earned them a place among the world's most feared gangs. Mara Salvatrucha, or MS-13, wasn't born in El Salvador, as many assume. It started in Los Angeles when immigrants fleeing civil war tried to defend themselves from street violence. What began as survival turned into something else entirely. Today, MS-13 operates across the Americas from the suburbs of Virginia to the prisons of Honduras. Their influence stretches far beyond spray-painted tags and low-level street crime. This is a gang built on fear, control, and brutality. They run extortion rackets in entire neighborhoods, smuggle everything from white powder to weapons, and execute anyone who crosses them with shocking efficiency. The methods they use? Better left undescribed in detail. Just know that they're meant to send a message, and that message is, we control this place. What makes MS-13 so dangerous isn't just what they do. It's how young they start and how loyal they stay. Recruits are often just teens, some even younger, pulled into the gang through pressure, poverty, or the need for protection. Once inside, getting out is nearly impossible. Their motto says it all, Mata, Viola, Controlla. It's as brutal as it sounds, and it's tattooed on the skin of some of their most committed members. They communicate through coded numbers, graffiti, and subtle hand signs, but also run complex operations on phones from inside prison walls. In some cities, they've gone from feared outsiders to ruling the streets. Local businesses pay them just to operate in peace. Residents keep their heads down, knowing that even saying the wrong word can draw attention. And attention from MS-13 isn't something you want. Despite international crackdowns and mass arrests, MS-13 has proven hard to kill. Its decentralized structure means that even when leaders fall, new ones step up quickly. And the more they're pushed out of one area, the deeper they dig into another. The more attention they get, the more underground they go. Pop culture sometimes glamorizes street gangs, but there's nothing glamorous here. MS-13 doesn't want fame, it wants fear. And it gets it, city after city, by being more violent, more committed, and more unrelenting than anyone willing to stand in its way. They don't need tattoos to prove who they are. No street tags, no flashy chains, no loud shows of power. The Sicilian Mafia, or Cosa Nostra, mastered the art of organized crime long before most modern gangs were even born. And they did it with a code of silence so strict, breaking it was often a death sentence. This group didn't start with smuggling or extortion. It began in the 1800s as rural protection rackets men, offering help to landowners and businesses in exchange for money and obedience. Over time, they grew into something much more powerful. By the mid-20th century, the mafia had embedded itself deep into Sicily's government, law enforcement, construction, and shipping industries. And when they crossed the Atlantic, they didn't just spread, they flourished. In the United States, the mafia became a brand. You've seen it in movies like The Godfather and Goodfellas. But behind the Hollywood glow was a machine run on threats, bribery, and bodies. The Sicilian bosses in Palermo and Corleone controlled entire families in New York and Chicago. If you wanted to build, ship, vote, or run a business, chances are they were already involved taking a cut, making deals, or deciding who gets what. Back in Sicily, their grip was terrifying. Judges and prosecutors who stood against them were marked. One after another, high-ranking officials were targeted in carefully coordinated attacks that shocked the country and made headlines around the world. Even after massive police operations and trials, Cosa Nostra kept adapting. They never went away, they just evolved. Today, they may not be blowing up cars in Palermo like in the 1990s, but they still operate quietly through shell companies, corrupt officials, and international networks. Drug trafficking? Still there, but managed more discreetly, often through connections with other syndicates. Illegal gambling, construction fraud, and political influence? As strong as ever. They don't need to raise their voices, their silence is what makes them terrifying. In Sicily, people still lower their eyes when speaking of them. Even now, some shopkeepers leave small envelopes each month, a subtle nod to an agreement that started decades ago. The Sicilian Mafia didn't invent organized crime, but they perfected it. And they left behind a blueprint that others from Latin cartels to Russian mobs still follow to this day. Blue versus red. Crenshaw versus Compton. For decades, two of America's most notorious street gangs, the Crips and the Bloods, turned entire neighborhoods into war zones. What started in Los Angeles in the late 1960s and early 1970s evolved into a national, even international rivalry that continues to echo across cities and prisons to this day. The Crips came first young men banding together for protection during a time of racial tension and police brutality. But what began as a street brotherhood quickly grew into a full-fledged criminal organization. Robbery, illegal substance trade, arms trafficking, they didn't just survive the streets, they owned them. Then came the Bloods, rising up in direct response. Smaller at first, they compensated with sheer aggression. The result was a conflict that spiraled into a cycle of retaliation and violence that still hasn't fully stopped. Graffiti tagged in blue or red on a wall could spark a shootout. A wrong color shirt in the wrong neighborhood meant you were fair game. This wasn't just gang culture, it was a way of life, enforced through fear, loyalty, and punishment. Turf was everything, and respect was earned in blood. But this rivalry didn't stay in Los Angeles. It spread through music, media, and migration. Soon, the Crips and Bloods were in Chicago, Houston, New York, even cities overseas. Their conflict shaped fashion, language, and music, especially in hip-hop, where references to sets and blocks became anthems. Law enforcement cracked down, but the war didn't end, it went underground. Today, many members operate inside prison systems, running organized networks from within. Others have evolved into modern crews dealing in high-tech fraud, arms movement, or working through shell businesses. And still, some break away from the violence and speak out former members who warn young people not to follow the path they once walked. The rivalry is more than colors. It's a deep-rooted conflict that shaped decades of American street life. And despite efforts to stop it, the echo of that war, red and blue, blood and Crip, continues to stain the concrete of America's cities. The Triads didn't start as criminals. Their origins go back centuries to secret societies that resisted imperial rule in China. But over time, those ancient bonds of loyalty and tradition morphed into something far darker, a tightly woven underworld empire operating across continents. Today, Triads aren't just active in China or Hong Kong. They're global, stretching into Canada, the United Kingdom, Southeast Asia, and beyond. These aren't disorganized gangs loitering on corners. The triads are highly structured, with clear hierarchies, rituals, and coded communication. Members swear blood oaths, use numeric ranks, and undergo complex initiation ceremonies. And once you're in, there's no easy way out. Their specialties are as vast as they are dangerous. From smuggling illegal goods across borders to laundering money through casinos and shell corporations, the triads are experts at operating in the shadows. They run underground casinos, handle forged documents, traffic in stolen goods, and maintain a steady grip on parts of Asia's black markets. One of their most profitable trades involves illegal substances packaged, moved, and sold through routes that span oceans. Unlike street-level gangs, triads don't need to make a scene. They operate behind curtains using corruption and connections to keep their hands clean and their operations running smooth. In places like Hong Kong, some triad families became so powerful that local films and pop stars reference them openly, sometimes even glamorizing their influence. But make no mistake, behind the flashy nightclubs and tailored suits is a world built on control, fear, and consequences. Step out of line and retribution is swift, not public, but very real. Authorities continue to crack down, but triads are slippery. Their decentralized nature makes them hard to pin down. They don't rely on a single leader. Instead, they function more like franchises, each cell capable of acting independently while staying connected to the larger network. The triads have survived dynasties, revolutions, and modern governments. They don't need visibility to dominate. They've thrived by staying quiet, calculating, and always just out of reach. At his height, Pablo Escobar was worth more than $30 billion, making him one of the richest criminals in history. But that wealth wasn't built through business deals or inheritance. It came from the Medellin cartel, a brutal, unstoppable empire that controlled the flow of white powder into the United States and much of the world. Based in Colombia, the cartel didn't just operate like a criminal group. It was a parallel state with its own army, its own fleet of planes and submarines, and its own rules. Anyone who got in the way, politicians, judges, journalists, risked becoming a target. And if you couldn't be bribed, you were eliminated. That wasn't an empty threat. It was policy. Escobar flooded American streets with illegal product, earning millions per day. He bought entire neighborhoods, built soccer stadiums, and even offered to pay off Colombia's national debt in exchange for amnesty. To many, he was a modern-day Robin Hood. To others, he was a nightmare in human form. The violence was unlike anything law enforcement had seen. Car bombs exploded in city centers, presidential candidates were assassinated, judges were gunned down. The country's capital became a war zone, all under the shadow of one man's empire. But power invites enemies. As the US and Colombian governments closed in, Escobar turned more erratic. His lavish estate, complete with a private zoo, became a prison he couldn't leave. The walls were closing in and his paranoia grew. He was finally tracked and killed on a rooftop, but his legacy didn't die with him. The Medellin cartel's methods, structure, and brutality became a model for others. It changed the game forever, not just in Colombia, but across the entire global underworld. Today, Escobar's face is sold on t-shirts, his name used in songs and shows. But behind the legend lies a dark truth. One man built an empire on fear, illegal trade, and death. And for a while, the world couldn't stop him. Naples is known for pizza art and beauty, but beneath the surface, there's another side one shaped by smoke, cash, and blood. That's the world of the Camorra, a mafia network unlike any other. If the Sicilian mafia operates like a boardroom, the Camorra runs more like a battlefield. It isn't one big family, it's dozens of clans, all fighting for territory, money, and power. And they don't wait for orders. They take action fast, often without warning. Unlike the more structured Cosa Nostra, the Camorra thrives on chaos. Turf wars in Naples have left entire neighborhoods caught in the crossfire. They run protection rackets, move illegal substances, control parts of waste disposal, and flood markets with counterfeit goods. In some areas, they're stronger than local government. Residents don't call the police, they look to the Camorra to settle disputes, collect debts, even organize construction. The Camorra's grip extends far beyond Naples. From Spain to Eastern Europe, they've become global smugglers and money launderers. And they do it with frightening adaptability. If one clan is taken down, another rises in its place, younger, hungrier, and more reckless. Their violence is personal. Assassinations are often carried out in daylight, sometimes by teenagers who view pulling the trigger as a shortcut to status. These aren't random street punks, they're part of a culture raised in the shadow of crime, where a single act of violence can change your life. Despite major crackdowns by Italian authorities, the Camorra keeps coming back. They embed themselves into struggling neighborhoods, offer jobs, provide money, and fill the gaps that institutions fail to reach. That's what makes them so hard to wipe out. They're not just criminals, they're part of the local fabric. If The Godfather was about honor and hierarchy, the Camorra is about survival and speed. It's messy, dangerous, and always evolving. In Naples, the line between legal and illegal doesn't blur, it vanishes. When former elite soldiers turn into criminals, the result isn't just dangerous, it's devastating. Los Zetas began as the enforcement wing of another cartel, but it didn't take long for them to break off and become one of the most feared cartels in Mexico's history. Unlike traditional gangs, Los Zetas brought military training, tactical discipline, and advanced weapons to the underworld. They used night vision goggles, encrypted radios, and set up roadblocks dressed as federal agents. They weren't hiding in shadows. They operated like a rogue army, one that answered to no law. Their rise was built on fear. While most cartels preferred to control quietly, Los Zetas made statements. Public ones. Their attacks were designed to shock not just rivals, but the entire country. Whole towns were sometimes overrun. Local police either stepped aside or joined in. Others disappeared. They didn't just traffic substances. They extorted businesses, hijacked cargo, ran kidnapping rings, and siphoned off oil from national pipelines. They turned every resource into a revenue stream. If it could be sold, they'd find a way to control it. Their brutality sparked massive military responses. Helicopters, convoys, full-scale raids, the Mexican government launched all-out operations to dismantle them, and they succeeded in killing or capturing top leaders. But as the top fell, new splinter groups formed, just as violent and harder to track. What remains today is a fractured version of the original cartel, with cells scattered across regions, still operating, still violent. Their methods, however, live on, copied by others, normalized in regions where law no longer rules. Los Zetas didn't just break the rules, they rewrote them, turning crime into war and neighborhoods into battlegrounds. If MS-13 is the face of Central America's gang crisis, Barrio 18 is the equally dangerous rival staring right back. Known for the number 18 tattooed across faces and bodies, this gang controls neighborhoods, prisons, and entire communities with a grip just as ruthless as any cartel. Barrio 18, also called 18th Street, was born in Los Angeles, just like MS-13. And like its rival, it spreads south, finding a permanent home in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. In many cities, they are the law. They impose curfews, collect fees from businesses, and determine who gets to walk where and when. The violence is relentless. Turf wars between Barrio 18 and MS-13 have turned cities into war zones. Drive-bys, ambushes, even machete attacks are part of their arsenal. Their members often live and die by strict internal codes. Disloyalty is dealt with immediately, and loyalty is tested constantly. What makes Barrio 18 terrifying isn't just the bloodshed. It's how they recruit and expand. They target youth who feel trapped, offering money, protection, and belonging. Once inside, members are expected to prove themselves fast, often through acts that leave no turning back. Like MS-13, Barrio 18 isn't just a gang, it's a network. They operate from inside prisons, using smuggled phones and corrupt contacts to keep business running smoothly. They're known to collaborate with larger criminal organizations, offering muscle and street-level control in exchange for resources. Governments have tried mass arrests, special task forces, even military deployment. But the gang continues to evolve. Sometimes they splinter, creating new cells that fight each other. Other times they regroup, stronger than before. They may not make headlines every day, but in the neighborhoods they control, their presence is constant and terrifying. Before Al Capone, before The Godfather, there was the Black Hand, America's first taste of organized crime, imported from Italy. And they didn't come quietly. Active in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Black Hand wasn't a formal gang, but more a method, a brand of terror used by early Italian immigrants to extort their own communities. Victims would receive letters marked with a black handprint, often containing threats written in broken English and sealed with a demand for cash. Pay up or suffer the consequences. The letters weren't empty threats. Bombings, kidnappings, and beatings followed those who ignored the warnings. The Black Hand preyed on fear, using mystery and violence to establish control in immigrant neighborhoods from New York to Chicago and beyond. They weren't part of a strict hierarchy. Some were freelancers, others were loosely connected to families in Italy. What united them was a willingness to use violence to collect money and silence anyone who resisted. The public feared them, and the press gave them dramatic headlines. For a time, simply being suspected of involvement meant being watched by police or hunted by rivals. Eventually, as Italian-American crime families rose and organized into what became the Mafia, the Black Hand disappeared. Or rather, it evolved. Their methods, extortion-coded threats and public intimidation, became part of the playbook for gangs that followed. The Black Hand might be history, but their legacy lives on in the structure and methods of modern organized crime. They didn't wear suits or make business deals. They came with a letter, a demand, and a warning. And in many cases, that was all it took. In the 1980s, bullets rained down and burst like a shower. That's how the Shower Posse got its name, and they lived up to it. Born in the tough streets of Kingston, Jamaica, the gang made its way to the United States, setting up shop in cities like Miami and New York. What followed was a wave of organized chaos that overwhelmed even seasoned law enforcement. The Shower Posse didn't just deal in fear, they exported it. With deep political ties back home and access to weapons and illegal substances, they operated like a hybrid of cartel and militia. Their members were known for discipline, precision, and an unmatched willingness to unleash violence. In New York's drug-fueled 1980s, they battled rivals like the Jamaican Spanglers, leaving a trail of firepower and fear through neighborhoods in the Bronx and Brooklyn. Authorities called them one of the most dangerous foreign gangs ever to land on United States soil. But even as headlines faded, the gang didn't disappear. Its legacy remains in court files, whispered stories, and streets forever changed by the sound of that violent shower.
This vessel is called the MSC Guyane, a gigantic container ship longer than 2 football fields. But hidden beneath its steel decks is something that turns this into one of the most jaw-dropping busts in modern smuggling history. Beneath stacks of fruit bags and legitimate cargo, officers uncover something bundles wrapped tight, lined up in rows like bricks in a wall. Inside is a suspicious white powder, packed tightly in shrink wrap and plastic. It's not sugar. It's not flour. It's the type of powder people risk everything to smuggle. Over 39,000 pounds of it. Street value? Easily over $1 billion. That's billion, with a B. The ship had traveled from South America and was en route to Europe with a stop in the US. But this wasn't just a case of one rogue crew member. As investigations unfolded, authorities realized several crewmen were involved. They had loaded the packages mid-ocean, under the cover of night. Yes, this was an ocean heist. Only it wasn't stolen treasure. It was illegal cargo being delivered. Authorities needed cranes to haul it all out. The US Customs and Border Protection released photos that looked straight out of a crime drama. Mounds of tightly packed bundles stacked taller than grown men, all laid out like a bizarre exhibit. What made this bust even crazier is the logistics. This wasn't your average speedboat run. This was a full-scale commercial ship, operated by one of the biggest shipping companies in the world, and it had passed through multiple checkpoints before someone caught on. The bust was so massive that it made international headlines. For a brief moment, it even overshadowed celebrity gossip and political drama on primetime news. Even Narcos fans raised their eyebrows. This felt like a plotline too bold even for TV. What started as a quiet docking at a US port turned into the largest maritime bust in US history. And it all unraveled container by container, with agents doing the unthinkable, catching $1 billion haul hiding in plain sight. Forget spy movies, this is a real case, and it's weirder than fiction. A man was caught trying to sneak across the Hong Kong-Shenzhen border with 94 iPhones taped to his body. 94. He looked like a homemade robot. Layers of phones wrapped in plastic strapped to his chest, back, thighs, even around his calves. The Border Patrol got suspicious when they noticed he was walking like a stiff-legged mannequin. That, and the suspicious metallic clunking with every step. When they made him remove his coat, the truth unraveled like duct tape. China has heavy taxes on foreign tech, especially Apple devices. Smugglers try to bring in electronics from Hong Kong where prices are lower. Some try hiding them in cars or packages, but this guy went full DIY cyborg. And he's not alone. This has become a whole trend. Tech smuggling via body wrapping. In some busts, smugglers were caught with over 100 phones. That's a walking Best Buy with a pulse. Security scanners pick up the shapes and the body heat from the phones gives them away instantly. High risk, awkward walk, and a big fail. Some smugglers go for high tech, others, high stakes surgery. At Madrid airport, security flagged a woman arriving from Colombia. She seemed nervous. Her story didn't add up. So officers ran a scan and froze. Inside her body were two foreign shapes lodged under her skin. Breast implants, but not the usual kind. They were filled with a white paste, almost 4 pounds of it, packed inside and stitched into place before the flight. This wasn't a horror story. She was fine physically, but the risks were massive, not just legally, medically too. The implants weren't done in a hospital. They were makeshift jobs done fast and loose. This isn't even the only case. In several airports, customs have found people smuggling enhanced body parts, from fake bellies to padded hips. Airports now use thermal scanners and motion analysis to spot these odd body mods. Strange, desperate, and dangerously creative, this kind of smuggling shows how far some people will go to hide something where no one wants to look. Let's get straight to it. Some smugglers really do try to turn themselves into human safes. In one of the most bizarre trends in recent years, airports across India have been catching passengers trying to smuggle solid gold. Not in their suitcases, not in their shoes, but hidden inside their bodies. Specifically in places that aren't built to carry gold. We're talking about cylindrical gold biscuits tucked away internally. These aren't small coins either, some weigh close to 2 pounds each. Customs officials at multiple airports have found travelers walking awkwardly, sweating, or unable to sit properly after long flights. Suspicious enough for a pat-down, and in some cases, an X-ray reveals the glittering truth. In just one sting, authorities recovered dozens of these gold packets from a single flight. Some were wrapped in plastic, others covered in black material to fool scanners. But technology has caught up. Heat signatures, metal detectors, and even body language AI now help officers spot the weird walks and tense faces. Why go through all that? Because gold prices in India are sky high due to import taxes. Smuggling small amounts repeatedly can add up fast. In 1 year alone, officials seized hundreds of pounds of smuggled gold from passengers using this exact method. Painful? Yes. Risky? Extremely. Profitable? Apparently still worth it for some. It's a smuggling method that's as uncomfortable as it is unbelievably creative. A traveler at Bangkok's main airport was stopped at security after officers noticed something strange during a bag scan. They saw what looked like a stuffed toy curled up next to clothes in a suitcase, but something wasn't right. The object was too detailed, too lifelike. When officers opened the bag, they didn't find a toy. They found a live, 2-month-old Bengal tiger cub, drugged and drowsy, wrapped in soft towels, hidden among plush animals. That's not a metaphor. Someone was literally trying to carry a tiger onto a commercial flight as carry-on. The traveler claimed she had no idea what was in the bag, but customs officials weren't buying it. The tiger had been sedated, likely to keep it quiet for the duration of the flight. Thankfully, the cub survived and was taken to a wildlife rescue center where it recovered safely. But the case exposed a dark trend: baby exotic animals being trafficked in horrifyingly confined ways. Suitcases, plastic tubs, even boxes marked as snacks. Some are drugged, others are tied up. The motivation? High demand for rare pets in private collections. Tigers in particular are sold for tens of thousands on the black market. At first glance, the car looked like any other crossing the border. It had luggage, snacks, a GPS on the dash, nothing out of the ordinary. But something wasn't right. Border agents noticed the driver acting nervous and, more importantly, sweating heavily despite the AC being on. They pulled the car aside for a closer look. That's when they noticed the dashboard seemed off. It was bulkier than it should be. After removing a few screws, they uncovered a hidden compartment. Inside, curled up in complete darkness, was a person. Alive, conscious, but barely able to move or breathe. This isn't fiction. It's a real method used by smugglers, especially at border crossings between Mexico and the US. People, desperate to reach safety or a better life, are sometimes packed into dashboards, inside seatbacks, behind panels, and even under floorboards. In some cases, passengers were stuffed into custom-built compartments so small they couldn't straighten their legs. The air supply? Minimal. The risk? Enormous. But for some, it's the only shot they think they have. In one case, agents found a woman hidden beneath the front passenger seat. She had been inside for over 4 hours. Thankfully, she survived and was rescued on the spot. It's not just about crossing borders illegally, it's about human lives being reduced to cargo space. Many of these individuals are victims, not criminals, and their stories often remain untold. What makes this kind of smuggling especially tragic is that it's both desperate and dangerous, and happening more often than most people realize. Now this one's gonna make you blink twice. A man arriving at JFK Airport was walking normally, carrying nothing suspicious. But customs officers noticed the bottom of his coat looked bulkier than it should. They pulled him aside and started asking questions. He was polite, calm, maybe a little too calm. So, they checked his luggage. Nothing. Then they checked his coat. Inside, sewn into the lining, they found 35 tiny plastic hair curlers, each one containing a live songbird. That's not an exaggeration. Each bird was stuffed into a tube, wrapped in mesh, just big enough to keep it alive and quiet. Why? Not for food or science. These birds were destined for underground singing competitions in certain communities where males that sing well can fetch big money. Some people even place bets like it's a bird version of boxing. And a rare species? That can mean thousands in profit. The smuggler thought he'd outsmart the system by literally wearing the birds into the country, but one bird chirped, just once, and that was all it took for customs to catch on. Thankfully, all the birds were rescued and handed over to wildlife services. But the idea of someone walking through a major international airport with a choir of endangered birds hidden in hair curlers? It's almost cartoonish. Almost. Until you realize it's been done multiple times, and not everyone gets caught. Sweet on the outside, shiny on the inside. In several Indian airports, officials have discovered a bizarre smuggling method. Gold, carefully molded into flat, coin-shaped discs, wrapped in chocolate foil, and placed into boxes that looked like candy. The wrapping was so convincing that one customs officer initially thought he was looking at a snack gift, but the weight gave it away. Gold is heavy, heavier than chocolate by far. When they peeled back the wrappers, the truth gleamed right back at them. This wasn't just a one-time gimmick, it became a pattern. Boxes of chocolates arriving from overseas were flagged and searched, revealing layer after layer of foil-covered gold coins, disguised to fool scanners and customs agents. The smugglers were banking on the fact that sweets don't usually raise red flags at security, especially in gift season. Some even added fake cocoa scents to throw off sniffer dogs. Creative? Absolutely. Successful? Not for long. In one of the biggest hauls, agents seized over 20 pounds of gold, packed into chocolate-style trays. And while gold isn't illegal, smuggling it to dodge taxes definitely is. What made this method stand out wasn't the value. It was the sheer absurdity. It looked like a kid's birthday gift, but inside was enough precious metal to buy a car. Who needs candy when your chocolate bars are worth thousands? At Bali's airport, customs officers scanned what looked like an ordinary black suitcase. A few clothes, some toiletries, and something else, something breathing. When they opened the case, they didn't find contraband. They found a live, drugged orangutan, about 2 years old, curled up like a toddler in a makeshift bed. The man who owned the bag? A tourist. He claimed he bought the orangutan for a few $1,000s at a local market and planned to raise it as a pet back home. Yes, he thought it would be fine to check an endangered great ape as luggage. Officials acted quickly. The baby orangutan was sedated with allergy medicine but thankfully survived and was handed over to wildlife protection. This wasn't a one-off either. Southeast Asia sees frequent attempts to smuggle exotic animals, often disguised as toys or packed into luggage compartments with tiny air holes. What makes this one stand out is the boldness. A wild animal the size of a toddler packed in a suitcase with barely any air. The good news? The orangutan made a full recovery and now lives in a protected sanctuary. The smuggler? Not so lucky. But really, who looks at a wild ape and thinks, carry on? This one is layers deep, literally. In a shipment of vegetables arriving at a US border checkpoint from Mexico, officers noticed something odd about the onions. Some had strange weight differences. Others didn't feel quite right. When they peeled back the outer skins, they found the truth-fake onions, designed to look real, but filled with a crystal-like substance. There were over 1,000 of them, packed neatly into crates, each one carved out, hollowed, and refilled. The outside was made from onion skins glued onto white plastic spheres. Even up close, they looked real, complete with a bit of onion scent added to keep the illusion alive. But these weren't for cooking. They were part of a high-value shipment of ice hidden in produce containers to pass through food inspection points. The smugglers had spent hours crafting each fake onion. Some were flawless, but the total shipment was too big to go unnoticed. The bust made headlines mostly because of how ridiculous it looked. Crates of produce with fake onions stacked next to real ones, all harboring something way more dangerous than bad breath. Authorities credited detection dogs and alert inspectors for spotting the deception. This one sounds like a cartoon caper, but it's 100% real. Over the course of several months, thieves in Canada pulled off one of the biggest food heists in history, stealing more than 3,000 tons of maple syrup from a strategic reserve in Quebec. Yes, Canada has a syrup reserve, and yes, someone figured out how to siphon off over $18 million worth of liquid gold without getting caught right away. They did it by renting a warehouse next to the storage facility, slowly replacing full syrup barrels with water-filled ones. The real syrup was transported out in trucks, sold on the black market, and sometimes even exported. It was smooth, quiet, and shockingly effective. The reserve wasn't checking every barrel. Why would they? Who steals syrup? Eventually, a worker inspecting the barrels knocked one over and realized it was too light. That cracked open the case. It took years to investigate and bring people to court. In the end, dozens of barrels were recovered, but not all. Some of the stolen syrup is still unaccounted for. To this day, it's called the Great Canadian Syrup Heist, and honestly, it sounds like a subplot from Breaking Bad, if Breaking Bad was about pancakes. You open a box of sweets and, surprise, it's not chocolate, it's a baby crocodile. That's what happened when customs agents in Egypt opened a shipment of what was labeled as confectionery headed out of the country. Inside were tiny Nile crocodiles, still alive, wrapped in wet cloth and packed into what looked like candy boxes. The reptiles were dehydrated and frightened, but they made it out safely, thanks to the quick reaction of airport staff. It turned out to be part of a broader smuggling network that trafficked exotic animals using ordinary packaging. Crocodiles are illegal to export without a permit, and trying to sneak them out disguised as candy is not just illegal, it's wildly reckless. The smugglers figured most candy boxes wouldn't be closely examined, but something about the shipment raised suspicion, possibly the strange smell, or maybe it was the slight movement inside the box that tipped them off. Luckily, all the animals were rescued and transferred to a wildlife care center. Sadly, this isn't rare. Officials in many countries have found snakes in Pringle cans, turtles in socks, and birds in shampoo bottles. But crocodiles in candy boxes? That's a new one. Makes you look twice at that snack delivery, doesn't it? In shipping yards across Southeast Asia and Africa, inspectors have gotten used to seeing odd cargo labels. But one container marked as recyclable plastic waste caught someone's eye. It was too clean, too heavy, and when customs opened it up, they didn't find bottles or wrappers. They found tons of elephant tusks, carefully hidden under layers of shredded plastic and resin. The tusks were long, curved, and polished, clearly prepared for black market trade. This method of hiding ivory in containers disguised as garbage has become a go-to trick for wildlife smugglers. The idea is simple. Use the dirtiest, least interesting label possible to avoid inspections. No one wants to dig through plastic trash. But organized wildlife units are now trained to look for inconsistencies, like weight that doesn't match the declared contents. In this particular case, over 2 tons of ivory were recovered. That's the remains of dozens of endangered elephants. Smugglers go to incredible lengths, cutting tusks into sections, covering them in wax, even coating them in molten plastic to avoid detection by sniffer dogs. But international pressure has made ports crack down. Teams now scan waste containers more thoroughly than ever. When the truth is hidden under layers of trash, you really have to dig to find it. And in this case, they did, saving a fortune in black market ivory from disappearing into secret markets. It started as a routine customs check at Bangkok's airport. A woman's suitcase looked unusually heavy for its size. Security agents flagged it and scanned it, expecting maybe electronics or undeclared items. But what they saw made jaws drop. Inside, packed tightly in small mesh bags, were hundreds of baby tortoises, their shells barely larger than bottle caps. Many of them were endangered species, particularly radiated tortoises, highly sought after in the exotic pet trade. These weren't being smuggled in luxury cases or custom setups, just stuffed into luggage like dirty laundry, crammed together with no food or water. Miraculously, most of them were still alive. Customs officers acted fast, handing the animals over to a wildlife rescue team who managed to stabilize and care for them. What makes this case so wild is the sheer volume. Over 1,000 tortoises in a single suitcase. That's not smuggling. That's a suitcase-sized zoo. Why so many? Because exotic tortoises can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars each. And when it comes to black market pets, rare means valuable. But it also means fragile. Most of these animals would never survive a long flight in those conditions. Luckily, this time the story ended well, with the smugglers caught and the tortoises rehomed safely. Fruit crates are a smuggler's favorite, especially pineapples. They're big, spiky, and filled with fibrous pulp that can hide just about anything. In a port in Spain, authorities cracked open a shipment of what looked like ordinary pineapples. But some were heavier than the others. When they cut into them, they found hand-carved cavities filled with a soft white paste. These weren't fruits. They were hollowed-out containers, stuffed with illegal powder and sealed to look fresh. The smugglers had gone to extreme lengths. Each pineapple had been sliced, hollowed, filled, and then glued shut with food-safe adhesive. From the outside, you couldn't tell the difference. The operation was part of a larger trend in which fruits like papayas, bananas, and even avocados have been used to move powder across borders. Food shipments often get less scrutiny, and the smell of produce helps throw off detection dogs. Still, the method isn't foolproof. Customs officers now inspect fruit shipments with X-rays and metal probes. The fake pineapples in this case were too perfect, all the same size, all stacked the same way. Suspicion led to discovery, and the entire shipment was seized. It's one of the more creative methods out there, tropical on the outside, criminal on the inside. Smuggling doesn't just happen on land or sea anymore. In recent years, traffickers have turned to drones, small, fast, and nearly silent. On the US-Mexico border, patrol agents have caught quadcopters flying at night, carrying bundles no larger than a lunchbox. Inside, not sandwiches, but powder-filled packets wrapped in heat-resistant foil and dropped with pinpoint accuracy. These aren't hobby drones. Many are modified for long-range flights with extended batteries and stronger motors. Some even have GPS pre-programmed to drop their cargo in quiet fields, rooftops, or alleyways. In one case, a drone dropped 6 pounds of powder into a park just outside San Diego. It was recovered only because it crashed into a tree. Authorities are now fighting back with radar, drone jammers, and night patrols. But the trend is rising. Drone smuggling is fast, low risk, and nearly invisible. No driver, no vehicle, no paper trail, and the tech keeps getting better. Some drones are equipped with cameras, signal scramblers, and even camouflage coatings. It sounds like something from a spy movie, but it's happening right now, just above our heads. In the sky, crime flies quieter than ever. At one European border, customs officers were inspecting what looked like an ordinary shipment of construction materials. Bags of cement, pallets of bricks. Everything checked out. Until a single pallet tipped slightly too easily. Hidden inside the bricks, cigarettes, thousands of packs, perfectly stacked, vacuum sealed, and surrounded by real cement to mask the scent and weight. Smugglers had literally built fake bricks, using real materials on the outside and hollow spaces on the inside. This wasn't a one-time trick. Authorities uncovered multiple shipments like this, some with cigarettes worth over $500,000, dodging huge taxes. Europe's black market tobacco trade is booming, and smugglers have gotten creative, hiding cigarettes in furniture, inside rolls of steel, even inside hollowed-out tombstones. But cement bricks? That takes patience, precision, and a twisted kind of genius. The bust went viral, especially after customs released images of bricks being cracked open like piñatas, revealing neat rows of smokes instead of mortar. It was a perfect mix of comedy and crime. The lesson? If your cement's too light, maybe don't light it at all.
No one expected that. President Donald Trump dropped a headline so big it sent shockwaves across the country. Cameras were rolling, the crowd was roaring, and then came the words that left even the most seasoned political analysts speechless. We're reopening Alcatraz, and we're turning it into the most secure prison this country has ever seen. Up to that point, no government statements had hinted at any plan to revive the infamous prison island. But insiders now claim whispers started weeks earlier, hush-hush site visits, increased marine activity near the rock, even a quiet federal inspection. The Department of Justice has refused to comment, but satellite images showing equipment being ferried across the bay have already gone viral. So why now? Why Alcatraz? Trump didn't offer much detail. What he did say was this: we've got the worst criminals, we've got people trying to tear this country apart from the inside, and we're going to make sure they don't get the chance. That one line set off a firestorm. Some believe he's referring to high-profile cybercriminals, organized crime figures, or international agents caught spying on U.S. soil. Others are more skeptical, warning that vague labels like enemies of the country could spiral into something far more political. Legal scholars are already digging into the constitutional gray zones. Is Trump trying to build a fortress outside the reach of standard due process? Even supporters were caught off guard. They loved the idea, but they want to know more. Is this a maximum security facility for select cases or a prototype for something bigger? There's even talk online that this is just phase one of a nationwide plan to overhaul the justice system by removing its most dangerous elements from public view entirely. And then there's the island itself. Alcatraz is more than just rock and rust. It's a symbol of isolation, punishment, and the extremes of control. Critics call it a distraction tactic, a move to dominate headlines and shift attention from economic debates and international tension. But Trump's base? They're calling it a masterstroke, a bold return to hardline justice. One thing's certain, nobody's laughing. Journalists, lawyers, activists, even foreign leaders are watching closely. Is this just posturing? Or is a forgotten fortress about to become the center of America's most controversial crackdown? The moment President Trump mentioned reopening Alcatraz, the first question on everyone's mind wasn't how. It was who. Who exactly does he plan to send to a place once reserved for the most dangerous men in America? So far, no official list exists, but Trump's wording at the rally was deliberate and unsettlingly open-ended. He spoke of traitors, cartel bosses, terrorists, and those who attack our nation from within. That phrasing lit a fire across the political spectrum. Supporters saw justice, critics saw a slippery slope. If the plan goes through, it's unlikely we'll see average convicts heading to the Rock. The assumption is that Alcatraz 2.0 would be a special facility, a kind of legal black hole for people considered threats beyond the norm. Names floated by pundits include high-level hackers, espionage suspects, and figures tied to organized crime rings. But there's growing concern that the criteria could expand. Who defines threat? What happens if that definition shifts over time? Whistleblowers, leakers, and controversial activists are also quietly being added to the conversation. Some worry this could be used to silence voices under the pretext of national security. It's not a far-fetched idea. Either history is full of leaders using prisons not just for punishment, but for control. And then there's the online speculation. One viral post suggested the prison could be used for high-profile arrests of corporate elites and foreign operatives. Another theory claims it's part of a larger crackdown campaign, targeting those who've evaded prosecution due to influence or wealth. Wild? Maybe. But in today's climate, even wild theories gain traction when uncertainty is this high. Legal experts are urging transparency. So far, they've received none. No clear criteria, no framework, no process, and yet the momentum keeps building. Behind closed doors, agencies may already be assembling lists, running background checks, and building protocols. Or maybe they aren't, and that's the problem. Nobody knows. One thing is clear, Trump's announcement wasn't just about reopening a prison. It was about redefining who deserves to be locked away. And that question, who gets locked up next, is what makes this plan as controversial as it is explosive. Forget the rusty bars and crumbling cells you've seen in old documentaries. If President Trump's plan goes forward, the new Alcatraz won't look like the haunted relic it is today. It'll look like something out of a science fiction movie and not the hopeful kind. Sources close to the administration have hinted that the proposed facility would be powered by next-generation security tech. We're talking full-spectrum surveillance, motion sensors woven into the walls, facial recognition at every door, and drones patrolling the airspace day and night. One early mock-up leaked online shows automated guard towers operated remotely from the mainland, complete with AI-powered targeting systems, similar to what some private military contractors have tested overseas. Even the cells themselves would change. Instead of steel bars and rattling doors, the concept images show solid transparent walls made from reinforced materials. Every room would be individually monitored, and inmate movements tracked in real time using biometric tags. Food would be delivered through mechanized hatches. Human contact? Minimal. And here's where it gets even stranger. There's talk of underwater access routes. Rumors are spreading about private contractors being consulted for constructing submarine tunnels, making it nearly impossible to approach or escape without detection. One of those companies? Allegedly tied to major names in tech and aerospace. The idea of Elon Musk's tunneling tech being adapted for prison security might sound far-fetched, but in today's world, it's not out of the question. Supporters of the plan say this is what's needed for the worst of the worst. A place so secure, so advanced, that escape is literally unthinkable. But others are warning that such isolation, combined with zero transparency, could set a dangerous precedent. If this much power is put into a place hidden away from the public eye, what safeguards are left? There's also a creeping fear that this won't be a one-time build. That Alcatraz could become a prototype, the first of a new wave of smart prisons with minimal human oversight and maximum control. If that happens, this island could mark the start of a very different era in law enforcement. As soon as Trump's Alcatraz plan hit the news, the internet did what it does best: dig deep, connect dots, and stir up wild theories. One in particular rose to the surface fast, and while it sounds outrageous on paper, it's gaining traction for a reason. They're calling it the billionaire prison theory. At its core, the theory claims that Alcatraz isn't being reopened just to house dangerous criminals. No, it's being prepped for a different kind of prisoner: the ultra-rich, the politically connected, and the ones who've gotten away with too much for too long. People who've been untouchable. Until now. It started when users noticed that several federal investigations into financial corruption suddenly went quiet right around the same time as the Alcatraz buzz began. Add to that a few anonymous leaks suggesting that high-level audits were being reactivated behind closed doors, and you've got the start of a digital storm. One post even named names claiming certain CEOs were quietly added to a government review list weeks before Trump's announcement. Of course, there's no official proof. Oh, but that hasn't stopped the speculation. Videos are popping up across social platforms, analyzing body language from past press conferences, tracking jet movements to San Francisco, and claiming that this prison isn't about punishment, it's about pressure. The theory suggests Alcatraz could be used not just for incarceration, but for leverage. A place to send someone when legal routes hit a wall, but the government still wants answers. Even more interesting, the chatter about special cells. Rooms allegedly being outfitted not with bars, but with desks, monitors, and secured comm lines. Could some of the inmates be forced to work off their crimes? Contribute intelligence in exchange for protection or lighter sentences? The idea's been floated before, but never in a setting like this. Supporters of the theory see this as a bold move against corruption. A power play to show that no one, not even the ultra-wealthy, is above justice. Critics, on the other hand, see it as a dangerous precedent. A move towards secret detentions and shadow trials. A system where who you are or who you know determines whether you disappear behind the fog. Even entertainment news is feeding the fire, comparing the concept to dystopian thrillers and pointing out how often this very idea has shown up in fiction. A high-tech island prison for the elite gone rogue? It sounds like a Black Mirror episode, and that's exactly why it sticks. If there's one thing history teaches us, it's that the biggest moves often happen out of sight. And with Alcatraz suddenly back in the national spotlight, people are asking who's really pulling the strings behind this. Because this kind of project doesn't just restart overnight. It takes money, logistics, and above all, deals. So far, the federal government has released almost no official details about the funding or contractors involved, but the clues are piling up. Maritime traffic near the island has quietly increased, with unmarked vessels reportedly carrying heavy equipment and reinforced containers. Satellite images show movement at odd hours. A few reporters tried to dig into recent procurement records, but much of the information is either redacted or buried in unrelated budgets. That's raised one giant red flag: black money. Insiders suggest the funding might be tucked into classified sections of national security spending. That's not illegal, but it does mean zero public oversight. No hearings, no debates, just quiet approvals and blurred signatures. And that's where the concern begins. Some tech names keep appearing again and again: private defense firms, security contractors, and even a few companies known for advanced surveillance AI. One of them? A firm with ties to military-grade drone development. Another? Allegedly consulted on digital inmate monitoring systems that use predictive behavior algorithms. Yes, predictive, as in monitoring someone for what they might do. There are also whispers of high-profile individuals being involved. Billionaires with ties to infrastructure, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence. If the theories are true, these individuals may not just be contractors, they may be investors. That changes the picture entirely, because when profit enters the prison system, motivations get murky fast. One of the more persistent rumors is that Elon Musk's tunneling company has been contacted about developing deep access routes under the bay. Musk hasn't confirmed anything, but his previous ventures into underground transport give the theory weight. Whether it's for supply routes, emergency evacuations, or something more secretive, no one knows for sure. All of this could point to a prison unlike anything the US has ever operated, not just maximum security, but maximum secrecy. A place where the rules are written by those building it, not the people watching from outside. Critics warn that this level of silence around government contracting can lead to massive abuse of power. There are no public bids, no clear accountability, and no concrete timeline. If this facility is being built in the shadows, what else is being planned out of view? As the buzz around reopening Alcatraz grows louder, there's one institution that hasn't been clapping, and that's the military. While President Trump continues to rally support around the idea of turning the island into the country's most secure detention facility, some high-ranking voices inside the Pentagon are sounding alarms behind closed doors. Officially, the Department of Defense hasn't released a statement, but according to recent leaks and anonymous sources cited by multiple outlets, there's internal disagreement about what this plan could lead to. Not because the military opposes stronger national security, but because they're deeply uneasy about the lack of clarity around the mission, oversight, and who exactly will have control once Alcatraz is active again. A confidential memo reportedly circulated within the Joint Chiefs of Staff outlines concerns about overlapping jurisdiction. The worry that a facility like this, sitting in federal hands but potentially operated by private security forces, could bypass existing military protocols and legal safeguards. In simpler terms, too much power in too few hands. There's also chatter about something called Project Sentinel, a term mentioned in encrypted messages flagged by watchdogs. Though unconfirmed, some believe it refers to a broader initiative that includes Alcatraz as a pilot site for next-gen detainment and surveillance models. If true, this would pull the military into a program they weren't consulted on, and that's not sitting well with everyone in uniform. Some retired generals have gone on record carefully to express discomfort. One commented, "If this facility exists outside of the usual chain of command, it creates a dangerous precedent. We've seen what happens when power operates without transparency. There's also strategic tension. Alcatraz, while iconic, isn't an ideal military asset. It's exposed, expensive to maintain, and limited in scale. Using it as a testbed for political messaging rather than national defense could dilute its purpose." Military planners are trained to think long-term, and many see this as a short-term media grab with long-term complications. Add to that the issue of optics. Internationally, a reopened Alcatraz could look like the US is bringing back Cold War-style isolation tactics. That gives other global powers ammunition to question America's human rights record, something the military tries to avoid getting entangled in. And yet, there's pressure. Some in the administration are reportedly pushing for military logistics support helicopters, drones, even naval cooperation for island security. If approved, it forces the Pentagon into a role it didn't choose and may not fully support. President Trump's recent directive to reopen Alcatraz as a high-security federal prison has not only stirred domestic debate but also captured international attention. While the proposal is primarily a U.S. internal matter, its symbolic implications have prompted reactions from various quarters abroad. In Europe, media outlets have highlighted the historical significance of Alcatraz and questioned the practicality of reviving a facility that was closed in 1963 due to high operational costs and deteriorating infrastructure. Some commentators have expressed concerns about the message this move sends regarding the U.S. approach to criminal justice and incarceration. In Latin America, particularly in countries with historical ties to the U.S., the announcement has been met with a mix of skepticism and criticism. Analysts point out that the decision could be perceived as a step backward in terms of prison reform and human rights considerations. Asian media coverage has varied, with some outlets focusing on the logistical challenges of reopening Alcatraz, and others interpreting the move as a political statement aimed at reinforcing a tough-on-crime image. Human rights organizations have also weighed in, emphasizing the importance of transparency and adherence to international standards in any plans to reactivate the prison. They caution against potential human rights implications and urge the U.S. government to consider the broader consequences of such a decision. While the full extent of global diplomatic responses remains to be seen, it's evident that the proposal to reopen Alcatraz has resonated beyond U.S. borders, prompting discussions about criminal justice policies, historical symbolism, and the international perception of American governance. As the situation develops, it will be important to monitor both domestic and international reactions to understand the broader implications of this controversial initiative. It hasn't happened yet, but the potential is growing, and it's not hard to see how it could. When President Trump announced plans to reopen Alcatraz as a functioning federal prison, the move triggered more than just political debate. It sparked something deeper, symbolic, emotional, and ripe for transformation into something even more powerful, a new national icon. Alcatraz has always carried an almost mythic status. The name alone evokes stories of impossible escapes, isolation, and iron-fisted justice. It's been the backdrop of countless films, novels, and documentaries. But now, with the idea of giving it a second life, that myth could evolve from history into ideology. There's already a wave of symbolism building around the island. Trump's mention of locking away the worst of the worst has opened the door for some supporters to treat Alcatraz as more than just a facility. In some online spaces, the island is being framed as a representation of strength, order, and taking back control. That kind of narrative can quickly grow beyond politics and turn into belief. If Alcatraz is rebranded as the place where justice is finally served, not just through trials but through high-security removal from society, it could become something more than a prison, a symbol of authority, of cleansing, of who belongs and who doesn't. And when symbols take root in political culture, they can evolve fast. The risk is that the island could begin to attract a type of reverence, not officially, not legislatively, but socially and emotionally. Supporters may start using its image as shorthand for hardline justice. Merchandise, memes, hashtags, those already exist in early forms. If the plan moves forward, that imagery could gain momentum. And once something becomes a symbol of belief, it doesn't take much for cult-like devotion to follow. The process wouldn't require anything dramatic at first, just repetition. Repetition in speeches, repetition in visuals, repetition in slogans. That's how meaning attaches itself slowly, then all at once. And if that meaning is tied to punishment and exclusion, it may shape how a part of the public views everything from crime to dissent. Of course, this isn't a guaranteed path. Much of it depends on how the reopening unfolds, if it even happens. But the ingredients are there: a leader with strong influence, a setting loaded with cultural weight, and a population divided by fear, frustration, and loyalty. At this stage, nothing is certain, and yet everything feels possible. President Trump's announcement about reopening Alcatraz has already triggered national debate, legal disputes, and global attention. But the biggest question hanging over it all is simple. What happens next? For now, there's no official launch date, no confirmed construction timeline, no finalized list of who would be detained there. But judging by the escalating discussion, this isn't a headline that will fade quietly. And if the project really does advance, it could mark the start of a much larger shift, not just in criminal justice, but in how America handles power, punishment, and politics. Some experts believe the next phase could involve quiet federal groundwork feasibility studies disguised as infrastructure assessments, remote surveillance installations under the banner of coastal security, or even contracts signed through back channels to avoid public scrutiny. That wouldn't be unusual, and it wouldn't necessarily be illegal. But it would make it nearly impossible for the public to know what's happening until it's already in place. Others warn about the ripple effects. If Alcatraz is reactivated, even in a limited capacity, it might become a blueprint. A model tested in isolation, then replicated elsewhere on other islands, in remote regions, or even underground. A prison system that relies less on courts and more on classification. Less on trials and more on labels like national threat. There's also the possibility of legislative change. If political momentum builds around the Alcatraz revival, future proposals might follow stricter sentencing laws, broader definitions of internal threats, faster detention protocols. In moments of political intensity, policies that once seemed extreme can suddenly appear necessary. And history shows that once a security structure is built, it rarely gets dismantled. More speculatively, this could impact more than policy. It could shift public perception. If Alcatraz is rebranded as a symbol of restoration and order, it may influence how people think about justice itself. Harshness could be seen as efficiency, isolation as leadership, silence as security. And while it might sound far-fetched now, so did reopening Alcatraz until it was said out loud on a stage, broadcast worldwide, and backed by a sitting president. Whether it becomes a working prison again, a political symbol, or just a flashpoint in the culture war, one thing is clear: the Rock is no longer just a ghost from the past. It's back in the conversation. And depending on what happens next, it might change more than just the skyline of San Francisco Bay. It might change the entire tone of America's future. That's about it. How do you feel about Trump's decision? Write in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.